The shocking truth why the 426 Hemi was banned from NASCAR. In 1964, Chrysler arrived at Daytona with a power plant so overwhelming that it did not merely stretch NASCAR's rulebook, it forced the organization to rewrite it. Within a matter of months, officials revised their entire regulations simply to prevent a single engine from competing. That engine was the legendary 426 Hemi. This is the story of how unmatched performance became a disadvantage. To grasp why this engine created such turmoil, you have to picture NASCAR in the early 1960s. It was not the corporate, billion-dollar spectacle we recognize today. Stock car racing still carried a raw, grassroots character. The word stock genuinely mattered. You purchased a car from a dealership, made safety adjustments, and went racing. Manufacturers embraced this. Ford Motor Company, General Motors, and Chrysler all treated competition as marketing gold. Win on Sunday, sell on Monday was not a catchy phrase, it was a business blueprint. By 1963, however, the rivalry had intensified. Ford poured enormous resources into racing. General Motors, officially restricted by the 1957 AMA agreement, still supported teams discreetly. Chrysler found itself trailing. Its wedge-head engines were respectable but not dominant, and in racing, respectable is insufficient. So Chrysler reached into its past. The hemispherical combustion chamber concept was not new. During the early 1950s, Chrysler's original Chrysler Firepower 331 had dominated its era. Drivers like Briggs Cunningham campaigned Hemis at Le Mans, and teams under Carl Kiekhaefer made waves in NASCAR. Hemispherical chambers offered superior airflow, combustion efficiency, and greater output per cubic inch compared with wedge designs. Yet they were expensive and complex, and by the late 1950s, Chrysler replaced them with simpler alternatives. That changed in 1963 when engineers began crafting a new competition-focused engine. The result was a cast-iron block V8 with genuine hemispherical heads, opposed valves, dual rocker shafts per head, and enormous intake ports. Displacement measured 426 cubic inches, roughly 7 liters. Officially, Chrysler rated it at 425 horsepower. Unofficially, in race configuration, output ranged between 500 and 550 horsepower, sometimes higher. At a time when Ford's best produced roughly 410 to 430 horsepower, and Chevrolet's famed 409 struggled to reach 400, Chrysler had created something beyond the category. The new Hemi debuted at the 1964 running of the Daytona 500. Richard Petty secured pole position in a Hemi-powered Plymouth with a qualifying speed of 174.418 miles per hour. Once the race began, the Hemi cars pulled away decisively. Plymouth swept first, second, and third. The domination continued throughout the season. By year's end, the Hemi had captured 26 of 62 Grand National events, approximately 42% of the calendar. This dominance created political tension. Ford was frustrated. General Motors teams were equally concerned. Predictable outcomes threatened ticket sales. NASCAR founder Bill France Sr. faced a dilemma: allow rivals time to respond or intervene immediately. He chose intervention. Late in 1964, NASCAR introduced new homologation rules for the 1965 season. To compete, an engine had to be installed in a required minimum number of regular production vehicles. Furthermore, it needed availability in intermediate models, cars Chrysler did not offer with the Hemi. The timing made compliance nearly impossible before the next Daytona event. The decision effectively sidelined the Hemi. Chrysler withdrew factory support. The 1965 season began without them, and the absence was noticeable. Eventually, a compromise emerged. Chrysler would return if it produced legitimate street versions of the Hemi and accepted weight penalties in competition. Thus, the street Hemi entered production for 1966 Dodge and Plymouth models. However, race cars using the Hemi carried extra weight, sometimes 100 pounds or more, to balance performance. Technically, the engine justified its reputation. Its hemispherical chamber allowed straighter airflow, centrally located spark plugs for efficient combustion, and large valves angled toward each other. Intake valves measured approximately 2.25 inches in diameter. Exhaust valves about 1.94 inches, immense for the era. The forged crankshaft, heavy-duty connecting rods, 4-bolt mains, and thick cast-iron block were engineered for extreme durability. Dual 4-barrel carburetors in race trim flowed over 800 cubic feet per minute each. The engine produced immense torque at low revolutions and formidable horsepower at high revolutions. It was both tractable and ferocious. Despite weight penalties, the Hemi remained competitive. Petty won the 1966 Daytona 500 in a Hemi-powered Plymouth. Yet the unrestricted dominance of 1964 never returned. NASCAR adjusted penalties annually to preserve parity. Street versions became icons. The 426 Street Hemi, though officially rated at 425 horsepower, likely exceeded that figure. The option cost more than $800 in 1966, a substantial sum when base cars sold for under $2,000. Production from 1966 through 1971 totaled roughly 11,000 units. Many buyers intended to race them, warranties notwithstanding. By 1971, emissions laws, insurance rates, and shifting tastes ended the original Hemi era. Decades later, Chrysler revived the Hemi name in 2003, leveraging its heritage even though modern designs differ technically. Today, authentic 426 Hemi cars command extraordinary value. Rare variants like Hemi, Cudas, and Chargers have sold for millions. The engine, once restricted for being too dominant, became one of the most celebrated and collectible power plants in automotive history. The deeper lesson is that racing superiority often provokes regulatory response. The Hemi was not outlawed for cheating, but for winning too convincingly. Competitive balance, political necessity, and entertainment value outweighed pure engineering merit. For roughly 7 years of factory-backed NASCAR competition, the 426 Hemi accumulated victories and championships that cemented its legend. Weight penalties may have curbed its supremacy, but they never erased its mystique. 426 cubic inches of engineering brilliance and controversy forever altered stock car racing. And that's the irony of the 426 Hemi story. The engine that was powerful enough to force NASCAR to rewrite its own rulebook didn't fade into obscurity, it became immortal. What was once considered too dominant, too disruptive, too overwhelming for the sport is now remembered as one of the greatest racing engines ever built. The Chrysler 426 Hemi proved something few machines ever do: that pure engineering excellence can shake an entire industry. It redefined what stock really meant. It forced competitors to innovate. And it showed that sometimes the penalty for being the best isn't losing, it's getting handicapped. Today, the thunder of a true 426 Hemi isn't just noise, it's history, it's rebellion. It's a reminder of a time when one engine showed up at Daytona and changed the balance of power overnight. Because in racing, just like in life, if you win too convincingly, the rules might change. And that's exactly what the Hemi made happen.